Every toxic relationship with a narcissistic or highly manipulative partner, there is an ecosystem, a dynamic between the one who is betrayed and the one who betrayed them. And there are reasons why the betrayed, you, stayed. Why you lived walking on eggshells, hoping things would change. Why you stayed, even when you didn't trust them anymore, even when the intimacy you longed for wasn't there, and even when there was no genuine repair, no acknowledgement of the pain they caused you. And worse, not only did they hurt you, but when you tried to express that pain, they deflected, dismissed, minimized. They made your pain the problem, not what they did. That kind of response, being emotionally abandoned in the moment you needed them most, is a secondary trauma. And for many women, it cuts deeper than the betrayal itself. You never got the presence, safety, or repair that could have made healing possible, and yet you stayed. There are reasons you stayed that don't line up with how you see yourself and who you know you are. And that can be very confusing for high-achieving women who are decisive, communicative, looked up to, confident, successful, and have many healthy relationships outside of their toxic one. Unfortunately, we don't start to see the impact that staying had on us until after a considerable amount of damage, until your self-worth, self-trust, and discernment have quietly eroded, until the most sacred parts of yourself, your identity, standards, spirits, are hurt. And that can feel deeply unfair, because while you're left holding the shattered pieces of your life, the person who hurt you seems unaffected. Or worse, they blame you, act like you're equally responsible, or shame you for needing more than a half-hearted sorry after a betrayal that's turned your life upside down. Or they make themselves the victim and feel more sorry for themselves than they ever did for you, even though they're the ones that created the consequences. So how do you fully recover from this? Not just to get over them, but to ensure this never happens again. Not just to survive, but to feel fully free, at peace, and open to your next chapter. Today, we're going to explore, step by step, how to decondition yourself that will make you toxic relationship proof. But before we get into that, let's explore the setup of what made you vulnerable to the conditioning in the first place. Because codependency or your childhood is not the whole story. Let's start with who you are. Studies show that 60 to 70% of women with narcissistic partners are not codependent, but do have elevated personality traits that narcissistic partners target. Positive traits that enhance healthy personal and professional relationships and contribute to your success, but are exploited in toxic ones. Hyperempathy, tolerance, agreeability, loyalty, cooperation, perseverance, and leadership skills are traits narcissistic partners find attractive and tend to be elevated in women in relationship with them. Collectively, these traits make you more willing to understand your partner, especially if you believe their childhood trauma is the reason for their harmful behavior. You take responsibility for your problems. You're not afraid of hard conversations, of challenge, of doing the work. And if you believe there's a chance to heal, you will forgive some of the most painful breaches of trust, not because you're weak, but because you're loyal, because you believe in repair. But that is not what motivates a narcissistic partner or any partner drowning in shame they refuse to face. While you take more responsibility, they deflect it. While you offer honesty, they dodge, blame, manipulate. While you're focused on progress, they're focused on power. And the more you try to repair, the more they exploit your efforts. You're pulled deeper into a cycle that confuses and drains you and slowly rewires your nervous system while convincing you it's your fault. And all of this is happening inside an invisible system of intermittent reinforcement and withdrawal. 1 minute there's a glimmer of hope, a reminder. The next, you're shut out, blamed, or punished for bringing up your pain. That unpredictability doesn't just exhaust you, it hooks you. And that's the trap. Your strength, loyalty, capacity for love all turned against you inside a system designed to break your clarity. But we can stop that cycle because now you see it, not as proof that there's something wrong with you, but as evidence of this conditioning. And now it is time to decondition. Healing isn't just about understanding narcissism. It's about rewiring your nervous system, healing past trauma, restoring trust in your intuition, and reclaiming self-worth from the inside out. with discernment at the center of it all. That is why I created a trauma-informed method that blends cognitive, somatic, and emotional healing, specifically for high-achieving women who are ready to fully heal. If you have ever been told you're codependent and it didn't add up, if you've done therapy, read books, but still feel haunted by the pain, if you've left the relationship but not the trauma, you are not alone, and you're exactly where you need to be. What you're dealing with right now isn't just the person who hurt you. It is the wound they left behind. That wound doesn't just go away. It drives patterns. Some you don't want. High-achieving people, regardless of their success, often have core wounds that compel them to get their self-worth through their outer achievements. Sometimes because their childhood home was chaotic and succeeding became a way to get love. And sometimes because well-meaning parents affirmed achievement, agreeability, compliance more than they affirmed you are as a person. Reliability, problem-solving, fixing, shining, persevering, excelling. A narcissistic relationship doesn't help that. It exploits it. Your wounds may not be identical to mine, but if you've been through this, I can promise you have one. And here is the danger. If you dismiss this and think the problem is just them, you will stay hooked. You'll stay dependent on content, narcissism research, social media reels, therapist posts, to stay angry enough to hold your boundary. You'll keep going back to the articles when you miss them, podcasts when you feel sorry for them, diagnoses when the shame creeps in. But the real healing isn't about intellectual reinforcement. It is about internal repair. The problem isn't them anymore. The problem is the wound and the way you learned to turn against yourself to exist in that relationship. You're not weak for being impacted. You adapted to survive a dynamic that forced you to shrink, silence, and self-abandon just to keep the peace. But now those same adaptations are keeping you stuck. You cannot heal by performing peace. You can't reclaim your worth by waiting for someone else to validate your pain. This is the first and hardest shift, to take your attention off them and turn it inward, because that is where your healing lives now.